Amidst the mountains lies a deep, dark pit in the earth large enough for a person to fit comfortably inside. Surrounding it stand numerous armed militants and local men. One of them begins filming the scene and approaches the pit, where 19-year-old Rukhsana is buried up to her neck.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
On October 24, 2015, a video uploaded from Afghanistan surfaced online. The clip was so harrowing and distressing that global news channels and international media outlets began covering it.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Before long, the incident became a matter of global concern for Afghanistan. In the video, Rukhsana is buried in such a way that escape is impossible, while the men standing around holding large stones. Her agonizing screams and final breaths are clearly audible in the footage, even as the stone throwers shout, "Recite the kalma, say the shahada." When I watched this video, I was overcome by a shudder. I couldn't fathom how such a thing could happen. It made me realize that the place of one's birth is a single factor that shapes the entire course of one's life. But why was all this happening to Rukhsana? I will tell you that in this video. The incident begins in Ghor Province, located in the heart of Afghanistan, a region that is completely isolated, backward, and virtually forgotten even by the locals themselves. It is surrounded by towering rocky mountains, and there is no authority figure to be found for miles around. Due to this geographical isolation, local warlords and Taliban commanders hold absolute sway over the area. Reaching the surrounding small villages is nearly impossible even for a regular security force, and harsh weather conditions only exacerbate the situation. Here, local tribal networks and radical warlords make life and death decisions on their own terms. Rukhsana was born into this environment. Her father was an ordinary, impoverished farmer like most others in the region, and she was his second child. It is worth noting that Rukhsana attended school in that area, especially under direct or indirect Taliban control. A girl receiving even a modicum of education was a significant achievement there. So despite the challenging conditions, her life was moving forward, but a far more tragic fate awaited her. When Rukhsana was just 13 years old, her family arranged her marriage to a man who was older than even her own father. He was neither an acquaintance nor a relative. Moreover, he was physically disabled. He had no hands or legs. This was essentially a transaction, a practice known as Walmart or Sherbaya, where a young girl is married off to a man whom no one else wants to marry, and her family demands a substantial sum of money for it. Rukhsana's consent was never sought. Instead, she faced immense family and societal pressure, with everyone insisting she had to go through with that marriage no whatever. But Rukhsana had other plans. She flatly refused to accept this forced marriage. Not only did she reject the proposal, but she also ran away from home with a boy her own age whom she loved, a boy named Mohammad Gul. They harbored a small hope of starting a peaceful life somewhere far away from their village. However, local Afghan security officials intercepted them along the way, dashing their hopes. Both were sent back home. When news of this spread through the village, the initial marriage proposal fell through. Yet her father learned no lesson from the incident and arranged her marriage to someone else. Once again, the man chosen for her was 4 times her age, an elderly man. Rukhsana pleaded desperately with her family, weeping and insisting that she did not want to marry this old man and begging to be spared, but her family refused to listen. In a bid to save her life, she decided to give faith another chance. She ran away from home a second time with Mohammad Gul. They planned to head to a remote village where no one would recognize them, allowing them to live under assumed identities. However, their luck proved even worse this time. They were caught again while still on the way, but this time the person stopping them was neither a civil police official nor an unknown officer. It was a very familiar face: Taliban commander Mullah Yusuf. In such backward and remote areas, commanders like Mullah Yusuf wield absolute power and control. They act as the law, the police, the judge, and the tribal leader all rolled into one. To make matters worse, Mullah Yusuf harbored a personal grudge against Rukhsana's family. He had previously sent marriage proposal to Rukhsana's home for his brother, but her father had repeatedly rejected them. Consequently, when Yusuf's men captured Rukhshana and Mohammad Gul, they were immediately placed in Taliban custody. They were not detained by the government court, but by the Taliban's own parallel regime, which enforced its own extreme codes. A few days after the arrest, Taliban commanders summoned Rukhsana's father. They demanded a bail amount or fine of 5 lakh Afghanis in exchange for releasing the girl. Just imagine what a massive sum 5 lakh Afghanis represents for an ordinary farmer in one of Afghanistan's poorest and most underdeveloped regions. For that farmer, raising such an amount was not merely difficult, it was utterly impossible. Even if he had toiled for his entire life, he would never have been able to save that much money. When he failed to pay the amount, the Taliban flatly refused to release Rukhsana. The girl was forced to remain in the custody of those Taliban militants for nearly 3 months. And I want to pause for a moment and reflect deeply on this situation. A young girl, 19-year-old woman, captured, charged without any legal basis, and held for months amidst hundreds of armed militants in a completely isolated and hostile environment. Can you truly believe that she was not subjected to any physical or mental abuse there? Can you even imagine yourself in that situation for a single second? During her time in custody, Rukhsana's family had resigned themselves to believe that they would never see their daughter again. After all, how can an ordinary, impoverished farmer fight against an armed extremist group? They did not even know what fate awaited their daughter. After 3 months in custody, the case was referred to a Taliban judge named Mullah Hasim. It was up to Hasim to decide the fate of Rukhsana and Mohammed. There were no lawyers, no fair trial, and the young woman was never even asked why she had chosen to run away from home. The legal and human rights recognized across the world were completely absent there. Such systems are known as kangaroo courts, where the punishment is predetermined and the court proceedings are merely a charade designed to give the local crowd the impression that justice has been served. Mullah Hasim found Rukhsana guilty of zina. He ruled that because she had run away with a man who was not her husband, she would be punished with rajam, death by stoning, continuing until she breathed her last. But the biggest question here was that rajam, or stoning to death, was not a legal punishment under the official Afghan penal code or any written civil law. No such law existed within the civilized constitution. Yet, what weight did the constitution or legal documents carry in backward and isolated regions like Ghor Province? On October 25, 2015, this brutal execution took place in a small village approximately 45 kilometers from Firozkoh. For the execution, Rukhsana was taken to a pit in the ground that was about 4 feet deep. She was made to step into that pit, which was then filled with the earth, trapping her in the ground up to her shoulders. This was done deliberately so that the condemned person could not struggle or flee during the punishment. Subsequently, Rukhsana's father and brother were forcibly made to stand before the pit so they would witness their daughter's death. 10 to 12 men picked up large, heavy stones while a crowd of hundreds of locals gathered nearby to watch the spectacle. Then the stoning began. Heavy stones were hurled one after another to that young woman's head and face. Amidst this, her agonizing screams echoed. She wept and pleaded repeatedly to be spared, insisting on her innocence, but no one listened. The stoning continued until she died. By November 2015, the video emerged from the area and spread via social media to Afghan civil society groups and international news networks. When the clip reached senior Afghan government officials, it came to the attention of a senior female official, Seema Joinda. In an interview, she stated that watching the video left her deeply shaken as her own daughter was exactly the same age as Rukhshana. Pressure mounted, the Taliban adopted a highly suspicious stance regarding the entire affair. Initially, they issued a statement on the official Twitter account claiming the video was old and unrelated to their current operations. However, when the international media exposed the lie using the video's metadata and facts, the Taliban altered their statement. They claimed the execution was carried out not by their fighters but by local pro-government warlords, though they maintained that the girl had received her just desserts. Now, you might remember Mohammed, the young man who had run away with Rukhshana. What punishment do you think the Taliban court handed down to him? You might assume that since the girl was stoned to death in such a brutal manner, the young man would have faced the same fate. Yet the Taliban court sentenced Mohammad Gul to merely 100 lashes. Afterward, he returned home and his life continued completely as normal. Tragically, Rukhsana's case was neither the only nor the first incident of this kind. This was just a recorded video clip that surfaced for the first time. Take for instance the case of Farkhunda Malikzada, which unfolded on the streets of Kabul in March 2015. Farkhunda was a 27-year-old student of Islamic studies. She was falsely accused by a local shrine in Kabul of burning pages of the Quran. Without any investigation, a violent mob gathered at the scene. In the presence of the Afghan police, the mob began beating Farkhunda. They threw her off a roof, ran vehicles over her, and ultimately burned her body while she was still alive. A subsequent official investigation revealed that Farkhunda was completely innocent. Similarly, in August 2010, in a market in Ghor Province, 25-year-old Khayyam and 19-year-old Siddiqa were stoned to death before a crowd of thousands. Their only crime was attempting to flee to Pakistan to marry of their own free will. This was the first major documented case of stoning to come to light globally after 2001. Even Khaled Hosseini, in his book A Thousand Splendid Suns, created the character of Amaria, a woman who was punished her entire life simply for being female, and just as things were finally looking up, was killed by Taliban officers solely because she was a woman. While this may be a work of fiction, it holds a profound truth. The same Taliban mentality that claimed the life of 19-year-old Rukhshana in 2015, killing her after trapping her in a deep pit, is now ruling over the entirety of Afghanistan. Just imagine the plight of the woman in that country.